Hi, I am Sabrina Scott, the president of the Five Spheres of Fit, and I'm here with Noel Scott, the founder. The Five Spheres of Fit is a lifestyle strategy that constantly evolves with you. The five spheres are your physical, mental, financial, social, and educational spheres. Today, we'd like to talk about humility and gratitude. Noel, let's get started.
Thanks, Sabrina. When I founded the Five Spheres of Fit, one of the reasons that I felt so strongly about it is I felt like it would help all of us identify some qualities and certainly some areas that we can all improve in. And I think we will probably find that many folks in our audience and elsewhere will agree that humility and gratitude are two very large concepts, qualities, if you want to call them that, where I think in society, generally speaking, we're starting to see a little bit of that erode in both humility and gratitude. And I think it's, for the most part, causing a lot of issues for folks. Humility to me, Sabrina, it's that quality that's so important because it allows you to take a moment to just listen and be humble and to allow others to be active, and the lack of that is definitely something that we're seeing a lot more. And I think there's a lot of reasons, and we'll probably uncover some of those today. And then, of course, gratitude, just being thankful for what you have. I think the constant bombardment of materialism and things like that, narcissism even, has kind of stopped us from being as having as much gratitude as we should.
I think it was day before yesterday or a couple of days ago. You and I were talking about how people have less humility, less gratitude these days. For example, if, a friend of ours, buys a nice big new house, right? Someone else is going to, and, you're talking about it with someone else, they're going to say, yeah, but it's not their money, it's their parents' money. Or, yeah, but do you know how he's making his money? It's not really legit. I mean, how does that affect us? Well, the very next day, I was talking to a good friend of ours, and she brought up the same thing about someone close to her. And she said, I don't understand why we always have to bring people down. So let's get started and tell me, how do these concepts of humility and gratitude, how do they pertain to our five spheres?
Well, I think first and foremost, we talked in a prior podcast about growth mindset. And I think growth mindset is applicable to all five spheres. And again, just a reminder on the growth mindset, your willingness to admit and have the humility to understand that you don't know everything, but that you want to learn as much as you possibly can. So it kind of starts from there, Sabrina, where having that growth mindset, having the humility to recognize that you're constantly growing, you're constantly learning. There's new information all the time. I know scientists, if anyone out there is a scientist, talk all the time about science is truth in the moment, right? It is constantly learning new things. And so, as it's a truth, that truth can change just like we can. We all have our guideposts, what we think life should look like for us, and what the things that we value, and certainly the things that we trust in and believe in. Sometimes those things shift. And we, I think, as humans, have to be prepared for understanding and accepting, being humble enough to recognize that it's okay. When we see things change, we can change with them. We didn't always know everything from the start, and we can grow as a result of that. From the standpoint of gratitude, just being thankful for what you do have. Life is hard. We talk about that all the time, Sabrina. It is not easy. It's not easy to acquire things. It's not easy to keep things. But certainly to be able to express gratitude in every moment, in all five spheres, being thankful enough to be able to go out and do a workout. The please and thank yous that come within our interpersonal relationships with friends and family. Too often times you'll hear me say, my gosh, they don't even say please, or they don't say thank you. Those are things that are so critical in creating these close, rewarding relationships. And when you don't have them, Sabrina, I think you'd agree, you notice that they're not there.
Absolutely. even in marriage, no marriage is perfect. We all go through ups and downs and argue, or even like simple arguments through good times. I mean, having the humility to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And you and I have talked about this. Like, there's a difference between just saying, I'm sorry, just to put it in the past, and really meaning, I'm sorry. I'm sorry
Doing
that,
what I'm sorry for. I
yes.
think that's what you always tell me. And there's some real profoundness to that because it's not like you're saying, it's not just saying I'm sorry. Yes, that you're showing that that's a sense of humility there, but recognizing what you're sorry about so that you're letting the other person know that this is important to me too, and I'm hearing you. And that humility, that sense of I don't know everything shows up in that moment when you say, I'm sorry, and this is why I'm sorry. I recognize the pain I've caused or the struggle that I've created with you. And so I think that's so important.
Let's talk about humility when it comes to mental stress. You had mentioned to me that it causes unnecessary stress, maybe focusing on reducing your humility, or it's just it's wearing, it's taxing. Tell me about that.
So we know the interplay between all the spheres and specifically within the mental sphere, a lack of humility there can be so vexing, not just for you, but for the other party that you're dealing with. And so when we have consternation, you know, fights with friends or family, our lack of humility and understanding what's going on, and to take almost like a step back, if you will, Sabrina, to kind of look at this with a more mature reflection and say, hey, look, what's my role in this? If I don't have that sense of humility to do that, not only in the mental sphere, but certainly in the others, educationally, I don't know everything. I've got to understand that that's okay. You're not supposed to. There's that old adage about being the smartest person in the room. And if you are, you want to get out of that room. I think the sense of that is if you're always constantly surrounding yourself by yes men, or if you're always in a situation where you feel like you know everything, then you're not really growing, right? I mean, we want to be constantly learning new things because not only is that intellectually gratifying, but I think going back to the mental sphere, it mentally makes us feel more open and more available. Like we then become less myopic and sort of look at the world with these sort of bright eyes of like, hey, anything's possible because I'm learning new things, strategizing different, taking care of myself differently. And I think those are really critical elements. Also, if we look into going back to the educational sphere, having that sense of humility to know like, hey, I want to learn more. And I know that I don't know everything. And there's experts, there's subject matter experts all around me. Everyone is your teacher. And if you believe in that concept, I think, and have the humility enough for that, you're going to be the best version of yourself because you're going to be constantly learning and growing yourself.
You've brought up how humility and gratitude affect your physical sphere. I don't know everything, your educational sphere, your social sphere, your relationships with people, and your mental sphere. And I have an example for the financial sphere. Our daughter, she's 10 years old, Naima. I don't know what she was saying about one of her uncles. And I said, yeah, there's two uncles, and I'm going to name them because I'll share with them because I'm proud of them. It's her Uncle Shashi and her Uncle Shavi. And they've both been successful professionally, very successful. And I told her, I said, no matter how successful they are, they're always continuing to learn. They always are listening to others and writing notes or typing notes. And it's impressive because they know there's so much more to learn. So I just have to point that out that I shared that with her. Like there's always room to learn. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room, like you said, right?
Absolutely. And to sort of buttress that point, Sabrina, what you're saying there is that's ideal. That's the way you want. I think in life we set goals, right? So we could check off the goals when we've met those. But within five spheres, this is a constantly evolving strategy. As you evolve, so do your five spheres. So we don't get locked in with, well, I'm all fit now. Check. done. It's like, no, I mean, as you age, as things change, as circumstances change, you may have to re-strategize. And that's the beauty of the five spheres. And that's the beauty of a sense of humility and knowing that you don't know everything. You may know a lot in that moment, but as you keep evolving and as life comes at you differently, you're evolving and hopefully have this strategy, this five sphere strategy, to then take all of that information in and then obviously respond positively and be the best version of you.
Me an example of humility and social media.
Oh man, that's a loaded one, Sabrina.
give
This
me
might have
give me
opened a
one or two
Pandora's
examples so
box.
people can understand what they're seeing
Sure.
on almost a daily basis when they open their Instagram, their Facebook, etc.
Let me start with this, and this might be contrary to what you think I'm going to say, but social media is wonderful. It is a wonderful medium for us to exchange with one another, ideas, photos, events, happenings in our life, all of those things. It's wonderful, and I love it. And I know tens of millions of people who love it as well. That being said, if you lack a sense of humility, if you are unable to um, look upon another's successes or even failures and not have to judge, if you can't divorce yourself from comparing yourself, if you can't pull yourself back from celebrating another, I think that's when things get really dangerous with social media. And when I talked about earlier with the foundings of the five spheres, I thought a lot about these things. What was so different in our world now as young adults than it was when we were kids? I mean, I was raised to always say please and thank you, to show that gratitude. I was always taught in our home that I had to have a sense of humility because I didn't know everything. Now, by that same token, Sabrina, sometimes culturally, sometimes in personal circumstances, we can have individuals in our home or in our social groups where they're just a certain way and it's not ideal. And that might be something along the lines of, women are subjugated. They're not thought of as the intellectual ones. It's really the men. And so when men are talking, women don't really chime
And
in.
sometimes that's a cultural thing that we want to
Absolutely. And
break.
that's what I'm saying. I think that's where that lack of humility can get dangerous. On social media, we see so much. There's so much information and it's constantly updating, right? So we have to have a filter, an ability to understand that what we're seeing isn't always the truth. But more importantly, that when we do see things that we like or that we're interested in, we have that sense of humility to really share in it and understand it for what it's worth, but not to be so detrimentally impacted that our mental sphere is off, or maybe a jealousy is created and our social spheres are off. So now we're not connecting with the very people that we should be connecting with. And physically, if we're seeing someone work out, like, oh my God, how are they doing this? How are they doing that? And having that sense of humility to recognize and be and say, hey, that's wonderful for them. It's not about me. It's about them. They're sharing something. And I think those are important things to remember, certainly when you're looking at social media.
I also thought you'd bring up politics. The last couple of campaigns have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Tense?
Anxious, hateful.
Yeah. Yeah. All the above.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's been so divided politically,
Mhm.
down the party that on social media, you see it, this party thinks they're right and this party thinks they're right. And then people are arguing and,
No one's listening, right?
no one's listening. And,
And that's lack of humility.
I sense that this next election is going to be the same way, or maybe people are getting a little tired of it and are just going to take a step back and be a little bit more humble about what they're posting.
We're so dug in, right, Sabrina? We're so dug in on and being so sure that we know what we know. And this is an issue. In psychology, we've talked about this in our house, the Dunning-Kruger effect. We're seeing that quite regularly. I remember talking to you about that, gosh, when we were doing
Tell
something
us
for our
what it is.
business.
Tell us what it is so
So
people who
the
don't know.
Dunning-Kruger effect is a belief in that I believe, if I'm correct, it started with the study of employer-employee relationships, and I was trying to understand through our business. We had a number of employees, trying to understand their thought process and why they did the things they did. At any rate, Dunning-Kruger says that the employee typically will vastly overestimate their skill and ability, and the employer, on the other hand, will vastly underestimate their ability. Like, oh my God, why can't they do this? This is so easy. It's like, well, it's not really that easy, apparently. And then the employee's like, oh, I'm so, it's self-aggrandizement, right? I can do anything. I'm qualified to do anything. And the result was that they don't know that they don't know. Like, they're not even aware that they don't know that they don't know. And that the danger in that, of course, is then you've got a group of individuals working who truly are going to be ineffective at something at some point. So when we look at that, we're seeing that a lot more now. Everyone is an expert. Oh, my brother was on the internet and he told me this, so now I'm an expert in geophysical, whatever. Or I'm a doctor now because I listened to a 2-minute speech by someone who once went to a course on biology. And the danger in that, of course, is it's just not legitimate. And we're seeing so much of that, and people getting dug in on that stuff. Like, that's their foundation versus something a little bit more objectively and universally legitimate. So,
Do you think people become more grateful and humble as they get older? Or do you think it depends on the person?
on a personal level, and I think probably statistics would bear out if there's a way to study that, but I absolutely do. And the reason I think is that with wisdom comes an understanding, or experience comes wisdom and the understanding of what you've been through. I'd like to think that as we all age, we're learning about one another and our interactions amongst each other and with each other, that we become more grateful and we're able to express that gratitude. Man, thank you so much for helping me out. I know that you didn't have to do that. I know that this didn't have to happen and you were there. The sense of humility and just recognizing, like, you're a young whippersnapper and you think you know everything. And in fact, you don't. And then as you get older, you recognize, oh my God, I was really kind of an idiot because I thought I knew everything. So I do think that comes with age. But more importantly, it's the intellectual capacity and the humility, if you will, to understand that those things are important. And you don't have to be an older person to know that. You just have to respect that you don't know everything, and it's appropriate to show gratitude because that's what strengthens our bonds with each other. So I think that's what's most important.
I think I was trying to think of when this timeline happened, but it has been about 10 years that you created the 5 spheres of fit. And it was prior to that where people did used to call you arrogant, cocky. I thought you were always very loving and very grateful for everything in your life. But I would tell you that as well, like, you're being very arrogant,
Yeah.
and I can't even remember the last time I said that to you. Maybe when we were fighting and I didn't mean it, or the last time the Patriots won a Super Bowl, but that's even gone now, I don't even that. But I think this has been a very, very informative conversation. I don't think I've heard anyone talk about this. It's really important. Anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
Just follow and understand those concepts. Really, really think about where you stand when it comes to your sense of humility. Recognize when it may feel like you're not being that way, or if someone else is. Maybe that's a lesson for you to understand, a visual lesson. And then certainly with gratitude, we want to be thankful for all the things that we have. That's important in a world, especially here in the United States, where materialism is like always in our face, narcissism. You want to be empathetic. You want to have gratitude because those are the things that are going to bind you much closer with other individuals in your life.
I think this is so key. And, we always say the 5 spheres of fit lifestyle strategy is not just for us adults. It's something we want to teach our children as well. And we're doing that with our 10-year-old. So, having them grow up with a sense of humility and gratitude is so important. So parents, I encourage you to, teach your children this as well and have them listen to this episode and our podcast. So that's it for me. And I've really appreciated this conversation, Noel.
Me too. Me too.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.